İyi akşamlar kıymetli arkadaşlarım, sevgili konuklar. Öncelikle bu güzel toplantılar silsilesini gerçekleştiren tüm arkadaşlarıma, Profesör Ruhi Ayangil'in şahsında teşekkürler etmek istiyorum. Çünkü harika buluşmalara vesile oluyorlar. Sağ olsunlar ve hep var olsunlar. Bu gecenin size ulaşmasını sağlayan sevgili Eşref Berk Türkoğlu ve Serkan Günalçin'e ayrıca özellikle teşekkürlerimi gönderiyorum. Efendim bu akşamki konuğumuz Doktor Agata Pawlina, Polonya'nın Kraków şehrindeki Jagiellonian Üniversitesi'nin Filoloji Fakültesinde yer alan Doğu Dilleri Enstitüsü'nde öğretim üyesi olarak görev yapıyor şu anda. 2021 yılında Sultan'ın Mehterhanesi'nden Ulusal Senfoniye, Osmanlı Türkçesinde müzik terimleri ve Türk leksikografyası adlı doktora tezini yazarak mezun olmuş. 2022 yılında Polonya Bilimler Akademisi tarafından finanse edilen üstün genç araştırma için oldukça prestijli bir Start 2022 bursu ile ödüllendiriliyor. 2019 ve 2023 yılları arasında Polonya Ulusal Bilim Merkezi tarafından finanse edilen Wojciech Bobowski'nin yazıları ışığında 17. yüzyılda Osmanlı Sultanı'nın sarayında müzik kültürü adlı çalışmada baş araştırmacı olarak görev yapıyor. Bu araştırma projesi kapsamında 2023 yılında Ali Ufkî hakkında bir monografi yazıyor ve onun Seray Enderum eserini kapsayan eleştirel bir kitap hazırlıyor. Ayrıca vokal müzik alanında akademi mezunu olup şarkıcı olarak da etkinliklerde bulunuyor. Etkinlik sonunda sormaya arzu ettiğiniz herhangi bir şey olur ise YouTube chat bölümünden yazabilirsiniz. Teşekkürler ediyorum. Şimdi İngilizce bir giriş yapacağım. Good evening, dear friends. It's honor to welcome to Agata Pawlina, a distinguished member of the faculty at the Institute of Oriental Studies, Faculty of Filology, Jagiellonian University in Kraków, Poland. Dr. Pawlina is a versatile scholar whose work spans the fields of musicology, linguistics, and cultural studies. Dr. Pawlina completed her doctoral dissertation in 2021 titled From the Sultan's Mehterhane to the National Philharmonic, Music Terminology in Ottoman Turkish and Turkish Lexicography. Her research explores the rich history of music in Ottoman Empire and its influence on Turkish language and culture. In recognition of her outstanding contributions to research, Dr. Pawlina was awarded the prestigious START 2022 scholarship for young researchers by the Foundation for Polish Science. Her research has been supported by grants from the National Science Center, Poland, where she served as a principal investigator on a project focusing on the musical culture and the Ottoman Sultan's court in the 17th century, based on the writings on Wojciech Bobowski, also known as Ali Ufkî or Bobovius. Dr. Pawlina is not only a scholar, but also a talented musician, having graduated from the Academy of Music with a specialization in vocal studies. She is a professionally active classical singer, bringing her deep understanding of music and culture to the stage. Of course, the contributions of scholars such as Rıza Nur, Çağatay Uluçay, Şükrü Elçin, Cem Behar, Muammer Uludemir, Cafer Ergin, Halil İbrahim Şener, Ruhi Ayangil, Fikret Karakaya, Çimen Seymen ve Judith Ak and many others who have illuminated us with their studies on Ali Ufkî in Turkey are particularly noteworthy. I'm sure Dr. Pawlina'n's presentation on the new findings about Ali Ufkî Bey's biography will be incredibly insightful. I hope you enjoy listening to her. The end of the presentation, if you want to ask any question, you can use YouTube chat section. Yes, Dr. Pawlina, the floor is yours. We wish you a very good presentation.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Yani beni davet ettiğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Umarım benim bulduklarımı memnuniyetle duyacaksınız. My presentation will be in English, so I will show it now. Just a second. There it is. Wojciech Bobowski is one of the most remarkable persons in the history of cultural contacts between Central Europe and the Ottoman Empire, and I'm sure in your esteemed company, I don't have to make a long introduction regarding his life and works. So I will just very shortly note that in Turkey, he is best known from his music-related and musicological legacy as Ali Ufkî, while interestingly in Europe, he is better known from his linguistics-related work and input. And thanks to decades of scholarly work of scholars already presented by Professor Cevher, we know quite a great deal about his work and life, but at the same time, there are still many gaps and unknown things in the story of his life. And before I go deeply into some details of Wojciech Bobowski's biography, I would like to share the context and the background of my research on him. So at the beginning when I started to think about starting a research on Bobovius, it was clear to me that I should focus on Polish part of his life and on Polish sources regarding Bobovius, as they are not very much known in the international academia. So my first goal was to look into archives in Poland and in Ukraine to any documents regarding the date and place of his birth, his early education, his stance on religion throughout life. And I would also look into any clues regarding circumstances under which he left Lviv and entered Sultan's service. That was my first goal, to fill in the remaining gaps in his biography. My second goal was to give Polish reader something to read in Polish. Because it turned out that in Polish Oriental Studies and in Polish Turkology, he was quite, well, frankly speaking, forgotten until very recently. And I wanted to fill that gap too. So I chose his Saray Enderum, which you know as a description of the Topkapi Palace he finished in 1665. And I wanted to translate it into Polish and prepare a critical edition of the work. To do so, I have chosen the most under-researched manuscript of the work held in British Library in London as MS Harley 3409. And what I did was exactly that. I translated the work written originally in Italian into Polish. And while doing that, I also would look at all the details he might have left to posterity about his life. So I was looking into autobiographic fragments of the work. And also I was very much interested in the way he described Turkish music for potential European readers. So I would look up into all sorts of details he might have given regarding musical practice at the Seraglio of that time. And also I would look into musical terminology he used, as my major is linguistics. So the way of describing music is quite important for me. And this is another very interesting topic, not for today, perhaps for another time. I was able to do both those things thanks to the funding gained from National Science Center Poland. And I put all my findings in recently published book, which was published by Jagiellonian University Press in 2023. And it is written in Polish, but today I'm going to share a lot of details I put there, so I hope it will, today's presentation will satisfy curiosity of my non-Polish speaking colleagues. And this is how the book ended up looking like. It is divided into 3 chapters. In the first chapter, I talk about biography of Ali Ufkî, and this is what I'm going to talk about today. The second chapter is the Polish version of Serai Enderum. And the first chapter is a glossary of all Ottoman Turkish terms used in the Serai Enderum. It is a very interesting topic, actually. I found more than 300 Turkish glosses and more than 13 sentences and common expressions that Bobovius wrote, Turkish expressions, and until now this abundance of Turkish vocabulary in that work was overlooked by scholars. So I hope it will shed some new light on Ottoman Turkish of the 17th century. Additionally, I enriched the book with miniatures of the so-called Ralamp costume book collection. So, for example, when Bobovius would be talking about Zülüflü içi olan, the reader will have the opportunity to look at the miniature showing Zülüflü. And this is how the glossary ended up looking. Alas, it is written in Polish, but there are also 3 more publications I prepared within the framework of this research grant. Those are in English. One is already out. It's about Bobovius's Mezmurlar that might interest you. And 2 more will be published soon, I hope. So this is the background of my today's talk, entitled Bobowski Ali Ufkî Bobovius, The Truth and the Legend. And I'm going to start with the truth. And what I understand by that is that, as you may know, both in the sources from the 17th century and in the newest publications, there are several versions of Bobowski's biography. They differ in some details. And today I would like to divide those information which have been already proven by scholars by some kind of documentary archival proof. And I would like to divide those proved facts from all the hearsays, understatements, misunderstandings that are being repeated in contemporary publications, but not necessarily verified by the sources. So the facts, the truth. The most important one, and the one that is really undoubtful, is that Bobowski's life story had been divided by faith into three distinctive periods. The first period I will call today a Polish period. We know that he was born in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth at the beginning of the 17th century. Most probable place or city is that he'd been born in would be Lviv. The second period would be the time when he would work and live and work at the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. And the third period would be after leaving the palace service and when he was still in Istanbul working as a teacher, translator, interpreter, informant, and author to various European and Ottoman parties, including occasionally getting back into Ottoman administrative service as a state interpreter, dragoman. I would like to underline or emphasize that only Turkish period of Bobowski's life had been validated by scholars by archival sources. And the dating of these sources extends to the year 1645-1671. So basically anything that pertains to time before or after that, we don't really have a written proof for that. And the kinds or types of sources used by the scholars are as follows. Of course, we have Bobovius's manuscripts, and the most interesting ones are those that are not really, well, something that can just show up when you do your work with a manuscript. So all sorts of loose pages, bills, or marginal notes on the marginalia would be the most informative if you want to research the details of life. Then we have very helpful when it comes to the timeline of his life, dates he left for us in his works, dates of completion of each given work. We also can look into archival records of many sorts, and a very abundant source would be reports, journals, and correspondence of the people he contacted, he got in touch with, he worked with during his time in Istanbul. And from these sources, scholars learned that until early 6050s, indeed, musician and poet Ali Ufkî lived at the Topkapi Palace. Then he left palace service. His çıkma took place most probably between late 6051 and late 6053. And so in the 50s, in the early 50s, his third persona of Wojciech Bobowski emerged. Ali Bek or Bobovius emerged. And this persona, Ali Bey Bobovius, as he was called by all the Europeans he was working with, in the 6060s, he would emerge as a well-known, well-established scholar, intellectual, working with Ottomans and Europeans alike. We also know some more details. We know that after çıkma, he lived in Pera, today's Beyoğlu. We know that he was married, most probably with Egyptian woman. We know that he intended to leave Turkey for England. We also know that he was later on proposed to go to France, but he declined this proposal. We know that thanks to newest research of Judith Howe. We know that in 6070s his health declined, and this all leaves us with a conclusion that he died between 1673 and 1675, or 1676, as Polish law would argue, as I will tell you more about in a minute. So those were all the facts that we have, that we've been able to prove, and that previous scholars proved. So everything prior to 6045 and after 6051, everything that you hear about Bobovius, or that you read that, for example, he for sure was Protestant or for sure was doing something, we actually don't know for sure. And the topics that we don't know much about could be enlisted like this. It's the problem of the date and place of his birth and death, the question of his noble descent, noble background. We actually do not know for sure that he was a noble. For today's presentation, I would like to say that I believe that he was a noble, but it's not really proven. We don't know much about his stance on religion. Since the 17th century, there is this very important source of Claes Rolomb that who says that he was a Protestant by birth. But actually, it's not really. It may not be true. It's not it's not proven. Then we don't know much about the circumstances under which he left Lviv and ended up in Istanbul. We don't know much about his alleged travel to Egypt, about his very often brought up information that he was Sultan Mehmed IV's Baştercüman. We don't know about it. There is also very popular information that he was a painter or miniature painter. And I would like to address this one. Actually, in 2004, Professor Tadeusz Majda wrote an article in which he explained that he was not a painter, but he was helping in purchase of Ottoman miniatures, Ottoman art to Europeans. So this is why his name would emerge on the bills or all sorts of other records pertaining to those purchase negotiations. But he was certainly not a painter. And there is also this talk about his alcohol-related problems, and I will not address this topic at this time also. So knowing all that, I knew that I should focus mostly on this first period of his life. So I would look into date and place of his birth. I would look into his noble background, his early education, his religion into which he was brought up, and the circumstances under which he left Lviv. Those were the topics that I wanted to focus on at first. So I would go to what I would do during my research. I would go to archives and libraries in Poland and Ukraine to look up for these details. I would use 17th century church and state registers. I also wanted to find all sorts of documents relating to Bobowski family. And I would also look into early Polish encyclopedias and armorials, which emerged in Poland in the 18th century, to find out the source of the Polish lore on Bobowski, which slightly differs from both Turkish and Western European lore on Bobowski's biography. And I would like to show you, present you examples of my sources. So if you are not familiar what an armorial is, or in Polish herbarz, it looks like this. It's something like encyclopedia, but it would enlist names of noble families and basic information about these families, along with a coat of arms of each family. And this is an example of Bobowski noble family tree used for genealogy. As you can see, this one is from the 19th century. And sadly, I saw several of such trees, but none of these enlists Albertus Bobovius, or Wojciech Bobowski, or Albert Bobowski. And this is an example of parish register in which priests would record baptisms. And these were the most important sources for me at the beginning of my research. And as you can see, it's not very easy to work with these sources. There are not much left from the 17th century. This one is quite well preserved, but there are some very damaged. And this is a main source into which I would look to find any information regarding place and date of Wojciech Bobowski's birth. And let me share something about the Polish scholarly perspective on Ali Ufkî's life story. So I would like to say that it seems like until 19th century, Bobowski was actually quite forgotten in Poland. There is only one mention about him in the 7th century sources, and it's in the translation of Paul Ricot's The Present State of the Ottoman Empire into Polish, made by a nobleman named Kraków'daki, published in 1678. You will see that source in a second. And in the 18th century, there is also only one mention in Encyclopedia of Ignacy Krasicki from 1781. And there is no indication of Wojciech Bobowski or Albert Bobowski in 18th century armorials. Even though the Bobowski family is enlisted in these works, there is no indication of any Wojciech or Ali Bey. And this is the one of the first Polish encyclopedias, and here you can see the entry on Ali Ufkî. Importantly, the author does not include Polish name of Ali Ufkî. You can see only Ali Beg, Ali Bey, and it may mean that actually Krasicki did not know the Polish lore about Ali Ufkî, that he translated or copied this entry from contemporary French or English encyclopedia of the time. Yes, but in the 19th century, we can observe a true outburst of interest in life and work of Wojciech Bobowski. And a beautiful example of it is this image of Ali Ufkî made by Antoni Oleszczyński. It's just artistic imagination at work. It's not a true image, of course, of Ali Ufkî, but it's very popular in sources. So I'd like to underline that it's 19th century, so it's very, very late source. And this outburst started with a scholar based in Lviv at the time. He wrote quite a long biographic article about Bobowski. And then from this article, other people got inspiration. For example, a very interesting source is a short novel of Stanisław Jaszowski, written also in 1828. And at the end of the 19th century, the first mention of Ali Ufkî is being shown in the armorial. So he seemed to be reintroduction of Ali Ufkî into armorials. But it's also very late, it's 19th century. And this is this famous article of written by Franciszek Siarczyński. And this article started it's a source for all the information we have in later Polish sources. So it's also quite late as a source. And it's important for me to emphasize that the only Polish source that is ever quoted in international publications is the one published in Polish Biographical Dictionary In 1935, it was prepared by Franz Babinger, and it is based on 19th century sources, Polish sources, and it was also repeated in newer Polish encyclopedias without verification. So one should have this in mind when working with these sources. And then recently, the interest in Ali Ufkî increased with works of Agnieszka Ayşenkaim and myself. So let's move on to my findings. As I said, I would like to believe that Bobowski was a nobleman, so let me give some context about his family. Bobowski family's story dates back to the 14th century. They would start in Lesser Poland, Małopolska region, with a village of Bobowa, which is near today's Nowy Sącz. And from here, for centuries, their possessions, their estates would spread east, up to Lviv, and then farther east to the eastern part of Podolia. And in early 17th century, there are already three branches of Bobowski family. One stayed in the Małopolska region. The other would be located in Lublin and the area. And the farther east branch would live in Lviv and in the villages around it. And then at the end of the 17th century, farther east in the Podolia. Importantly, in the late 17th century, there are several men bearing name Bobowski, holding important military and administrative posts in Lviv and Podolia region. So the assumption that Wojciech Bobowski Ali Ufkî was born in Lviv, we are taking from his own words, actually. Twice he signed his work with by name Leopolitani, which we can translate as from Lviv. And also one traveler, Corneliu Mani, who most probably met Bobovius in Istanbul, also called him Leopolitano and Polacco da Leopoli, so a Pole from Lviv. So let's believe Bobovius that he indeed was from Lviv. And this source you can see here. It's the most exciting discovery of myself. It's a fragment from parish register held in Central State Historical Archives of Ukraine in Lviv. It's actually register or record of baptisms organized in Catholic Cathedral in Lviv between in the years that are stated on the slide. And in the middle of the page, we can read that on the 20th March 1606, Albertus, son of Matthias Bobowski, and his wife Elizabeth had been baptized in a Catholic cathedral in Lviv. So as you can imagine, after going page by page, all those registered books, when I saw this, I got very excited. So I started to do some math. And if we are to believe that it is our Ali Ufkî, if he was born in 1606 and he died in 1675, he would be 69 at the time of his death. It's quite a long lifespan for the century, but still it's possible. So let's say it is our Ali Ufkî. Then let's take another date that we've established. We know that we assume that he left Poland in early 1630s. So that would be that would make that he was 27 at the time when he was taken captive and went to Istanbul. It's not impossible, but I will leave that to you. Do you believe that this might be Ali Ufkî or not? It's yours to decide. I don't know. I believe it's possible, but I don't know. Interestingly, when we stick with that date, and we will add to this 20 years of his service at the Topkapi Palace, that would give us 1653 as the time of the living of the palace service, which is also a date that we've already established as a possible time of his living the palace service. So again, we don't know if this is Albertus Bobovius, if this is Ali Ufkî, but perhaps it is. But even if it's not, this document proves that Bobowski family indeed lived in Lviv, also at the beginning of the 17th century, not only at the end of the 17th century, as my other sources would state. And it also shows us that Lviv branch of the Bobowski family would be Catholics, not Protestants. And we also know that the name Albertus was actually used in the family, in the Bobowski family. So even if this person born on baptized on 20th March of 66 is not our Ali Ufkî, perhaps Ali Ufkî is another son born in this branch of Bobowski family. I leave that to you. I don't know. Now, this takes me to another important thing that I would like to emphasize. I believe that the name that you can see in many contemporary publications, Albert Bobowski, like the version of Polish name of Bobovius is Albert Bobowski, it's not proper. I believe that we should use as a Polish name of Bobovius, of Ali Ufkî, we should only use Wojciech Bobowski. And my arguments are as follows. The name Albert Bobowski in Polish sources shows only in 19th century. And statistically, even though the Latin Albertus Bobovius, which we can find in sources, Latin Albertus can be translated into Polish as Wojciech or Albert, but statistically, in the 17th century, it would be more often Wojciech, while Albert would be Adalbertus. It's a small difference, but it is a difference. And the third argument, and the most convincing for me, is that the translator of records the present state of the Ottoman Empire, Kraków'daki, who translated the work into Polish in 1678, he uses name Wojciech Bobowski, as you can see here. And this is the source that is closest to the lifespan of Ali Ufkî. So I would believe that if this translator chose the name Wojciech, I'm going to believe that his name was indeed Wojciech. To move on, if we want to believe that Bobowski indeed was born in Lviv into a noble family, he was probably also well educated, and his education is undoubtful. We can see from his works that he was educated musician, able to transcribe music by ear. We know that he was versed in several languages, and very importantly, we've learned that his use of Italian was very important. And all these things, music and language, he might have learned already in Lviv, because at the time it was prosperous center of commerce, culture, and education. And for me, musical education and Italian are the most important hints to look up, to trace, to find out where Bobovius might have gained his early education. So musical education in Lviv of the 17th century could be gained at the city school, at the church schools within the framework of Catholic, Orthodox, and Greek Catholic institutions, and within the framework of Catholic monasteries. And as per Oriental languages, it's important to remember that in the 17th century, Lviv was called the Gate of the Orient, and it was multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-denominational city, robust city, and Bobovius might have learned even basics of Oriental languages in Lviv. And because of the use of Italian in his works, I was inclined to believe that he was educated in Jesuit institution. So I looked into a Jesuit college in Lviv. It was established in 1608, and since 1615, a boarding school for music was operating within the framework of this institution. And I was looking into records of this school, but sadly, I did not find any mention of Wojciech Bobowski, Albertus Bobovius, Adalbertus Bobovius. So the question of his early education is still open. So with the work on Bobovius in the sources, it seems that every question answered brings up even more questions. And it's the same with the circumstances under which he left Lviv and went to Istanbul. The most prevailing version of events is that he was taken captive by the Tatars as a young man. And according to Polish law, he was taken captive during Kantemir's raid on Podolia region in 1624. And from Siarczyński's article, this belief that it happened in 1624 was transferred into newer Polish sources. But actually, I am personally inclined that he was taken captive at early 1630s, as Bahar established. Perhaps it was during this the so-called Abaza Pasha War, but it could have also been any smaller invasion of Podolia in 1630s. So this is what my belief is. I would like also to give you more possibilities based on knowledge of Polish history and the realities of the 17th century Poland-Lithuania. We know from the history of Lviv that there were instances when Lviv City Council, while facing the Tatar invasion, they would give several well-born, educated men to the Tatars as pledge or hostages in exchange for abandoning the siege of the city. So they would give them very valued people to most probably further to be sold in exchange for abandoning the city. So if Bobovius started, if his way east started like this, he might have been 27 years old while his journey eastward started. Another possibility, even more intriguing, is that young Bobowski, versed in Oriental languages, could have been sent to the Ottoman Empire or Crimean Khanate as a spy or as a future dragoman by one of the Podolian magnates, by the emerging force of magnates, nobility. And it might be that, and then something went wrong, so he might have been compromised on the way, and thus he would be sold into captivity, etc. Or something went incredibly good, that he was such a good spy that even 400 later, we don't know that he was a spy. So again, I will leave that question open because we simply still don't know how he ended up in Sultan's service. However, his own words in Saray and the Room gave us tiny bit of details about his whereabouts in the Ottoman Empire before entering the Enderum. So he, on the page 77, he says that before entering the Enderum at the Topkapı Palace in Istanbul, he would spend some time in the palace of Adrianople, today's Edirne. And this may lead us to the question of timeline of the second period. We know also from Saray Enderum that he entered the Topkapı Palace around 6040s, because he says on the page, you can see that he got into Topkapı when Sultan Ibrahim ruled, and then he stayed when Sultan Mehmed IV ruled. And that could mean that several years before 6040, he would spend in the Palace of Adrianople. This interpretation of facts would be fitting to the timeline I gave you a few minutes ago. And there is also a fact that in the Saray Enderum, Ali Ufkî very often compares the customs and a way of life in the Seraglio under the Sultan Murad IV, and compares it to the time and the way of living under Ibrahim and Mehmed. So perhaps he also witnessed the way of life under Murad IV, perhaps when he was starting as a İçoğlan in Adrianople. Then another interesting autobiographical fact that we can learn from Saray Enderum. Bobovius states that he's been in the service of Galatalı Kara Mustafa Pasha. He was originally a favorite of Sultan Ibrahim the First. Until 1643, he was his silahtar. Then he became Vezir and Beylerbey of several eastern provinces of the Ottoman Empire. And we know that Galatalı Kara Mustafa Pasha in the years 6056-57 was appointed Beylerbey of Grand Cairo, as Bobovius called it. So he was Beylerbey of Egypt. And perhaps this confirms the alleged Ali Ufkî's journey to Egypt, and perhaps even his Egyptian wife. Perhaps. But if we are inclined to believe that, it changes a bit the timeline we have, and it raises a question whether he might have been in the service of an Ottoman dignitary while at the same time working for the English embassy. So again, it is possible, but we don't know. And to the very much known and research international network of Ali Ufkî, I would like to add two names to this long list of people with whom Bobovius contacted and worked. The maybe a bit less known individuals. Franciszek Meniński was actually a Polonized Frenchman, diplomat, a very important diplomat, and a very important linguist of the 17th century. And we know that Bobovius taught him Turkish. And another is Teofil Rutka, who was a Jesuit, and he also met Bobovius in 60s, 70s. He is known by the fact that he was intermediary during negotiation to release some of the Polish captives of war from the Ottoman captivity. And he's also very much known in the 17th century from his anti-Turkish literature. And this is how they both look like in the Bobovius life's timeline. Importantly, Meniński received from Bobovius one copy of his Turkish translation of Comenius's Janua Linguarum Reserata, while Teofil Rutka received two manuscripts of Hidayet, and then Rutka gave those manuscripts to the Jesuit college in Lviv, and both are now held in Vienna. But this Jesuit connection was also quite interesting for me. And last but not least, let me share my opinion on Bobovius' stance on religion, which is also very much discussed in contemporary subject literature. So I'd like to emphasize that if it looks like from my sources that if Bobovius indeed was born in Lviv branch of the Bobowski family, he would have been Catholic by birth, but not necessarily. Please bear in mind that 17th century, early 17th century Poland was not the stereotyped Catholic country. It was still very much a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-denominational state, and with three main religions were, of course, Catholic religion, but also Orthodox, and there were a lot of Calvinists during that time. So it would be quite easy to imagine that part of Bobowski family would be Catholic and part of Bobowski family would be Protestant. So again, we still don't know. Then from the second part of his life, from the Turkish part of his life, from his music, we know that we can interpret, we can see some Sufi inclinations and even connections from the music repertoire he wrote down. And there is also from the third part of his life, when he would translate Bible into Ottoman Turkish, when he would translate Anglican Catechism into Ottoman Turkish, he could fit into the group known as the Christians of Allah. He himself, in Saray Enderum, do not speak about stance on religion. He calls himself, as you can see, a secular man from Poland. And at the end of the work, he signs the work as a humble servant of all who love virtue. So those are the facts which we can interpret that he wanted to underline, that he serves no religion. He is a secular man. He just observes and shows what he sees. And as per my personal view on this topic, I completely agree with a Polish 19th century Polish scholar, Samuel Orgelbrand, who says about Bobovius, he was a Pole by nation, versed in many languages. His religion was apparently, or on the surface, his religion was Turkish, but what he actually believed in, only God knows. And indeed, in my opinion, Bobovius, we know a great deal about him, but he still remains a very mysterious person. And we still have a lot of things to find out about him, his life, and his works. Thank you very much. And if you have any comments or questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Evet, ben de bakıyorum. Evet. Evet, şimdi öncelikle first of all, thank you very much for that very good presentation. And there is a question from Orkun Zafer Özgelen. I thought he was not born as a Protestant, but become a Protestant. That's my idea, but we can observe because of the Psalms, translations, and arrangements that he used to write in his manuscripts, demiş. He says. What do you think about this question?
Yes, his stance on religion. Well, personally, I deem this sort of question an anachronism. I personally believe that Bobovius was the sort of spiritual man. Like he might have believed in a higher power over watching over his fate, but I would not say that it was important for him when he would grow with his life story. It was not very important whether he was Protestant, Catholic, Muslim, Sufi, Sheikh, or whatever. I believe that he might have developed a point of view of a divine creature and spiritual life that was not connected into any denomination. And as per into which religion he was brought into. As I said, he might have been Catholic if he was this Bobovius from my source, because this was baptism in Catholic cathedral. But again, it was the beginning of the 17th century in Poland of that time, in Lviv of that time. So yes, he might have become Protestant. He might have become Muslim. I don't know.
Okay, another question from Professor Ayangil. He says, do you think that would be any suspicious or possibility about Ali Ufkî's Jewish origin or roots?
Jewish origin, again, if
that's an interesting question.
Very interesting. Yeah, Jewish or Armenian, right? We also have some sources that would state that he was Armenian. So to look up from the linguistics perspective, the name Bobowski is a Polish surname. The Jews in the Poland, Lithuania would have other type of names, right? Like Tatars would have also, like, for example, the surname would sound with suffix ich if the family was of Tatar origin. So if he was this nobleman, if his name was Bobowski, I don't believe he would have been Jew. But there is still possibility that he was not a nobleman, that his name was not Bobowski. So again, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Another question. Evet, bazı şeyler görüyorum. İyi akşamlar, iyi yayınlar. Buralar Türkçe. Evet, bahsedeyim. Evet, Gözde Hanım, Gözde hocamız, iyi akşamlar, iyi yayınlar dilemiş. Nilgün Doğru Söz hocamız benim çok sevgili arkadaşım, sınıf arkadaşım daha doğrusu. İyi akşamlar demiş, verimli bir yayın diliyor bize. Ardından Hatice Hanım, Profesör Hatice Hanım, iyi akşamlar, iyi yayınlar demiş.
Merhabalar, ben de bakıyorum şimdi. Buldum.
Evet, Şerife Hanım, Şerife Yalçınkaya, Profesör Şerife Yalçınkaya bu güzel konu için teşekkür ediyor, iyi yayınlar diliyor. Anıl Nejat Sekmen, benim sevgili yüksek lisans talebem, teşekkürler ediyor. Evet, Pınar Çakı, iyi akşamlar, iyi yayınlar demiş. Orkun Zafer Bey, wish you a good evening and presentation to Dr. Pawlina demiş. Teşekkür ediyoruz Orkun Zafer Özgeren'e de. Last one, that's my question. Could you please say us the definite name of him? What is that according to you? What is that? What do you think?
So
but only one question, one sentence. Wojciech Bobowski. Is that right?
That's genitive. That's with an ending. But the nominative would be Wojciech Bobowski.
Wojciech Bobowski. What's that? EGO?
This is
What's
genitive. This is one of
genitive?
the declination.
Okay, understood. Okay, thank you. There is another thing. I will look. Ben okuyorum şimdi. İrfan Karaduman, thanks for presentation diyor. Benim çok sevgili kardeşim Profesör İrfan Karaduman ve bir sorusu var. Is there any popular song in Europe that you know refer to Ali Ufkî from Ottoman diyor.
Well, in Europe, as far as I can tell, for Europe, the most known pieces are the psalms, the mezmurlar.
Mezmurlar.
Musicologists know about it because it was also recorded by king singers and by Sarband and by Jordi Savall. So some of my musician colleagues would know Ali Ufkî from these psalms, mezmurlar, these recordings.
That's all. Okay. Şerife Yalçınkaya, Professor Şerife Yalçınkaya, have you found information about Ali Ufkî Bey's relationship with Hezarfen Hüseyin Efendi?
Actually, it was not myself. It was Judith Haug who found in her monograph that is available online on the manuscript held in Bibliothèque Nationale, Turk 292. In Judith Haug's monograph, yes, you can find records, documents that confirms connection with Hezarfen Hüseyin.
Very good knowledge. Thank you. And Salih Demirtaş has got a question. Thanks for these informative talks, Agata. First, I'd like to ask a question on the baptism register you shared from 1606. Is the document mentioning this name as Wojciech?
It can't present the name Wojciech because this sort of parish registers would be written in Latin. Latin wasn't language of church, Catholic Church, so they would always use Latin along with Latin names. This is the something that may be a bit problematic because one have to know which Latin name is translated into which Polish name. So, as I said, Albertus, which we can see on the slide, Albertus, as you can see, is Albertus Filius Mattia Bobowski et Koniuk Elizabeth. So these names, Matthias, Polish would be Mateusz. So this is the reference. You have Latin version of a name and other language version because it's not only in Polish. So Albertus, statistically in the sources in the 17th century could have been translated into Polish as Wojciech or as Albert. And more often, Albertus would be translated as Wojciech, while Albert would be Adalbertus. I know it's complicated, but this is how it is. The records from this period, a lot of archival records would be in Latin, and everything about church, Catholic Church, would be in Latin. So we just have to know that Albertus is Wojciech. I hope that answers it. I'm sorry, it's complicated.
Okay. Is there any question? No.
I would like to just hint to the comment that's been there that, of course, I am aware that Ali Ufkî did not compose mezmurlar. I know that is his arrangement of Genevan Psalter, because I saw this comment and I wanted to explain that I am aware. But still, if you ask some European musician, practitioner musician, if he heard about someone like Ali Ufkî, most probably he would not hear about him unless someone is working on early music. And in early music, they would know him from this Genevieve Psalter. This is what I wanted to underline.
Okay. Any question? No? Where is it? Okay.
Ruhi Hoca asks, what do you think about Albertus' preliminary education, referring by he had written the musical notation well?
Could you repeat the beginning?
What do you think about Albertus' preliminary education, referring by he had written the musical notation well?
Yes. As I said, his musical education is the most important hint or trace that we could use to look up his education, because, well, it's something very distinctive, right? To be able to write music. So he must have, in my opinion, he must have learned European music, European notation back in Europe, but back in Poland. So he might have had Italian maestro who would teach him if his family was rich enough, or if he found if you found not a master, but someone who would a patron. If he found a patron in some other richer people who would give money for his education, he might have had Italian teacher, or he might have learned it in church, most probably in church or in some Jesuit institution or Franciscan institution. So my opinion is that he knew music quite well when he left Lviv. And I see in literature that there is this hint that he was an organist, that he played organ. We don't know that. We can't know that up until we find something in the records, in the archive, that would say that he knew playing organ.
Okay. There is another question from Gökhan Güneş. Thank you for this presentation and your work. Do you plan to publish an English or Turkish translation of your book?
Inshallah. I hope to, but yeah, I am thinking about English version or a Turkish version. Yes, I think that would be, even though Seray Enderum is quite well known in the international academia, it's not the version, it's not the manuscript that I researched. So I think it would be worthwhile to prepare English or Turkish translation also of this manuscript, because it differs quite significantly from the versions that are available in Turkey, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Peter Salvucci. He says, good morning. Good evening. I was curious if you could comment on the relationship between European musical culture and Ottoman culture during Ufkî's time. What influence in his time we may not know about?
I believe this question should be answered by Professor Cevher. He's much better oriented in this musicological details. So if you'd like to answer. First of all, it's a very vast topic, right? So just in 2 sentences.
Yes. we gave a lot of concerts in Europe, especially in France, in Belgium, and European people like very, very much, and they wrote very important comments on the magazine and newspapers. They likes only I say definitely they likes 17th century's music absolutely. That's all that I can say. Şerife Hanım sorusunu sormuştum. Tekrar sorayım. Evet, onu sormuştum. Onu tekrar sen gönderirsin. Evet, evet tamam. Başka another question? I think it's finished. It's finished. Okay. Endless thanks to everyone who contributed. Yes, endless thanks to everyone who contributed. Thanks too much. Yani too much. Thanks too much. Too much. Too much. And Dr. Pawlina, we're waiting for you in Izmir. If you would like to come to Izmir, please find me. And I'm very, very pleased to know you and in your studies. Thank you very much for your very good presentation. Thank you. Thank you for all. Thank you for all friends, all TUMAC members. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It was a pleasure. And see you somewhere in the world.